from the industry here. I see the event is starting to be live streamed. I think it makes sense. Do we want to Andrea, do we want to start by showing the agenda just so we can go over the antitrust language?
Feel free to show it if you got it at hand, Alicia.
Let me see if I've got the...
Yeah. So
yeah.
the tricky, my computer is so slow. I don't know what's happening. It's getting old and needs to be changed, honestly.
Okay. So antitrust language, well, first of all, Hyperledger is committed to creating a safe and welcoming environment for all. For more information, you can visit the website. Antitrust language, Hyperledger is part of the Linux Foundation. Meetings involve participation by industry competitors. It's the intention of the Linux Foundation to conduct all activities in accordance with applicable antitrust and competition laws. It's therefore extremely important that attendees adhere to the meeting agendas and be aware of and not participate in any activities that are prohibited under applicable U.S., foreign, U.S. state, federal, or foreign antitrust and competition laws. You already know when the meeting is and how to get in. And we've got some upcoming events here. I wanted to check in with everybody before we go to our presentation about the wiki. Right now, we've been putting upcoming events in meeting agendas. It just seems to my eye to be taking space away from the focus of each meeting. Are people comfortable if I move that to a separate page within the wiki? Just an upcoming events page? I'm hearing no responses. Okay.
We hear crickets, as you usually say.
Yes, crickets.
Crickets. I love this.
Okay. So I think I'll be doing that either later today or tomorrow. And that said, we have
Alicia, an alternative is you could move the events information at the bottom of that thread. At least we're following up on each meeting, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, even at the bottom, it's still taking up space on the page, taking away from other things. If we have it as a separate page within the wiki, people see it there. We can still put events we're adding to it onto the event page just so that people know that something new has been added. And then after the 1 week where we mention it during a meeting, move it over to the upcoming event. Because right now we have things going out to when the next Hyperledger Global Forum is next calendar year. So I don't think we need to see that for every meeting, but people who don't come to every meeting might want to see it. I'm happy to follow somebody else's lead on this. If somebody else has a different opinion, I just think it would be cleaner to me.
I think we're good.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's go ahead. Take the lead, please.
Thank you. I shall do that. That's it. We have a really special guest today. Pete Gowanlock is the VP of Freight at DLT Labs, and he has a very illustrious background, including time Walmart Canada. Pete, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And I'm going to stop sharing now so that I believe you'll be able to share your screen when you see fit. And everybody, to hand it over to Pete Gowanlock. Welcome.
Good afternoon, folks. I know a few on the call now. Nice to be here. I'm honored to be here. So Pete Gowanlock, I'm VP of our Freight Solutions at DLT Labs. 30 years in the industry is my experience. I call myself a systems integrator, project manager, always at the crossroads of supply chain and financing is my background. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll do a little bit of a background with a few slides on the Walmart Canada implementation of our freight solution. And then I will share a demo. I hope this will be an interactive session, so please do ask questions at any time. My screen is visible, I hope.
Yes.
Perfect, Pete. That's perfect.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little background on the Walmart Canada implementation. It is a private, permission-based blockchain solution. And we have transportation providers connected to this environment. The whole purpose of the freight solution at Walmart Canada is to process domestic freight invoices for Walmart Canada. So domestic freight invoicing is inbound and outbound freight, inbound to their distribution centers, outbound from distribution centers to stores. Inbound can also be directly from vendors into stores as well. So direct store delivery. We are processing full truckload, less than truckload, intermodal or rail on our invoicing process. We have since launched invoice audit capabilities and processing capabilities for both small parcel and last mile delivery, as well as a direct store delivery scheduler, which helps the carriers with the vendors and ensuring that the store managers see all of the weekly deliveries that are occurring at their store, whether it's from Walmart's fleet, from their distribution center, or direct store deliveries being done from vendors, and so that they can avoid those collisions and wait times for the transportation providers arriving at their stores. It allows them to do their resource planning as well for when they need staff and unloading, loading the docks, and then stocking shelves and that. Today, I will demo the freight, as well as I thought I would demo the last mile delivery, because it's a little bit of a unique solution as well. To our knowledge, this is the largest enterprise blockchain solution in the world. Some metrics around that: we have over 1,000 active users. The users are either Walmart Canada staff, all of the transportation service providers, whether they're from the dispatch or the accounts receivable team of a transportation carrier. With our DSD solution, we have vendors that are directly connecting and updating their weekly, quarterly schedules for deliveries. And then there are a few external auditors that Walmart Canada allows for certain audit purposes. We're processing roughly 500,000 invoices annually. If you include small parcel and last mile delivery, it is into the millions. 132 million IoT messages that we have processed, 4 million temperature updates using IoT data, processing temperature updates within a trailer that's been on one of these invoices. We're tracking mileage. 575 million miles have been traveled using this platform, 87.9 million gallons of fuel consumed. And one of the key metrics too is dispute resolution processes in between the invoices that a carrier submits and Walmart approves. Dispute percentage has gone from roughly 70% previously down to less than 2%. We're currently at about 1.5% of the invoices that are submitted by the transportation providers. Walmart now disputes less than 2% of them, whereas previously it was north of 70%, unfortunately. Any questions before I go on any of those metrics? All right, carrying on. What has made this successful? How have we done this? Well, DLT Labs has built a core platform, which is I mentioned earlier, the solution that we've implemented at Walmart Canada is on this platform. It is a private permissioned core blockchain. And 90% of what we're finding that 90% of what we're doing and any solutions asked for us is already on the core platform that we have developed. And then there's about 10% of low code configuration that is required for new use cases that we're being asked for. So you can see some of the different modules that we have built that allow us to provide solutions like this, tracking and tracing, a workflow for supply chain, value transfer, money wallets, contract management and compliance, and a variety. I'll mention later on too, one of the keys to success was systems integration. Shippers and carriers have all invested in their platforms for their operations. And our philosophy has always been, do not change the daily operations of your transportation provider, the dispatch team, the accounts receivable team. Do not change the daily operations of your shippers, that they care about where they're getting tenders out and making sure that their supply chain is moving efficiently. They do not want to be challenged with answering questions about invoices and invoice processing. And the more you leave to them to be able to integrate and operate in their normal daily operations in the platforms that they are used to, the better. So we integrate with the shippers TMS, carriers TMSs through using APIs. And we have some carriers that do not come on to our portal, which you're going to see here in a minute, to review anything. They're just communicating back and forth with us via their TMS or billing solution. Any questions?
Hey, Pete, it's Eric here. You mentioned onboarding new platforms, right? And you can have various ERPs, TMSs, WMSs. It never ends. What's the typical time frame of onboarding a new vendor like that, be it on SAP or particularly a TMS?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Eric. We guide carriers through a workshop. We do a 1-hour workshop on APIs with carriers on how to integrate with us. At the end of that 1-hour workshop, they are connected to a UAT test environment with us and doing very straightforward API calls. Get the status of my invoice, get all of the information about my invoice, send a message to update that invoice. Now, depending on how complex they want to get, because there is a variety, so much functionality and the power behind the APIs that they can do with us. Usually a four-week project for one person at a transportation provider, and we'll help them all the way through it. Some of the carriers certainly don't have large IT teams, may not be terribly familiar with APIs, so we'll provide folks to consult and guide them through that. Does that help you, Eric?
And would you say that most carriers today have the capability of relying on APIs?
We're finding that they do, Eric. And when connecting with us, they usually boil down to how much volume they were going to be processing on the platform. When they saw our user interface and the fact that we generate and have an invoice sitting there ready for them to simply review, maybe add some charges to it and submit it, that the portal interface is extremely easy to use. They chose to only use the portal as opposed to doing an API integration with us. So it's getting there, Eric, with API technology, absolutely, with the carriers. As you know, here in Canada, there's been a lot of amalgamation, some very large carriers across Canada that have a lot of the shipments in that. As you get down to the smaller ones, it will be certainly more of a challenge with API integrations.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pete.
Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, actually, sorry, I had one. It's Jeff Rivage. I was too fast, not too fast. Get my mute button off. You're in the middle on the screen that's up right now. It says carrier. At the bottom it says raise disputes. What happens through this whole process around disputes? How is that being resolved? Is that out of the technical realm then and back to whomever that discusses that, or is there something in there that logically creates resolves a dispute? How does that muck up everything to the right? It's just my cheap way of saying it.
Thanks for the question, Jeff. Yeah, so there are auditors that will help resolve the disputes. So Walmart Canada and to give you an example of the numbers, Walmart Canada has 2 auditors that do dispute resolution, 2 only. So that team used to be significantly larger when there were that 70% range of disputes occurring with the transportation invoices. They've trimmed that down to simply 2 people doing these audits. And they will do things like check what was the information in the original TMS. Is there an approval that for some reason did not flow through to the DL Freight platform to give that approval? And like if there was a reway from the carrier, they'll review the documentation provided by the carrier. Items like that would be examples of how they help resolve a dispute. Does that help you, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I'm going to say too that when a dispute does occur, because of the wealth of information and everything is visible, and the carriers have visibility to the contract rates, they understand the business rules for how their invoices are processing. Both Walmart and the carriers agree to those contracts in the platform and understand how each and every invoice should be processing in the network based on the different rules for whether it's a TL, LTL, intermodal, by region, things like that. There can be a lot of different variations to it, but they trust that the invoice will be processed. And when they have visibility to the information, they can very quickly resolve these disputes as well. Okay.
So do you see DLT Labs bringing AI in to replace that?
Good question. Not at the moment. I don't foresee that. We're doing a few things in AI in other programs in our small parcel auditing, which would kind of address your question really, because of the volume of small parcel. It's a little more useful there. We haven't seen the need for it over here in the freight directly at the moment.
Okay, again, thanks.
Yep. Okay, just a little background so everyone understands how this freight platform is set up. So what do you need to do to process a freight invoice? Well, you need the freight rates that are agreed to between the carrier and the shipper. Those are updated, and we receive those and upload them into our platform. They are visible between both the shipper and the carrier, and they are validated and approved in our platform. So everyone can see them that needs to see them. We receive fuel rates, whether it's a weekly rate for truckload, less than truckload, over the road shipments, a monthly fuel rate for rail, that is in our platform. Everyone can see it and knows that what the fuel rate is for that week. So those are in the platform. And then for all of the different business rules of what is acceptable for an accessorial charge, tolerance levels for wait time, detention, demurrage, number of shunts, things like that. How is off-route miles calculated? All of that is provided to the shippers and the carriers ahead of time. and they agree to that. And that is how the smart contract is built within the platform, and each and every invoice that processes across the platform will follow those business rules that are agreed upon. So then in the day-to-day operations, when a tender is submitted out to a carrier and accepted, we are creating a draft invoice of that in our platform immediately upon tender acceptance. So the carrier has not moved this. They have not even gone to pick up this tender yet. And there is a draft invoice for their visibility as well as Walmart's in the platform already. And then as the carrier goes and performs the service, they are doing the pickups, etc., we will be receiving system updates from IOT Data within the trailer for telematic information, temperatures, humidity checks, etc. And then, of course, GPS tracking for location, how long they have been at a distribution center, their arrival and departures from stores, etc. So that is allowing Walmart Canada does not require a hard copy proof of delivery from their carriers using this platform. So those are system updates coming in from the IoT devices. And then step 4, and I will ask you to pay attention to notice that there is a 5-step process here. You will see that on the platform as I do the demo as well. And carriers like to see where they are, where is their invoice along its journey towards payment. And so the 5-step process is visible to them as well, and they know where they are. Step 4 here is where the carriers do the majority of their work. They may be adding accessorial charges here. If they add an accessorial charge that breaches their approval of Walmart, if they don't have approval for it, then yes, it will enter into a dispute process that Walmart auditors will help with. And then they review taxes, etc., and they submit this when they feel this invoice is ready for submission. They submit this invoice for payment. And what is key about this step is that approvals have happened all along the way. It is a real-time invoice. And so approvals have been happening from the time it was tendered to picked up to being delivered, multiple different stops along the delivery of this shipment. And at the time that the carrier leaves the final destination on its drop, its invoice is ready to be submitted. It is final. They may add accessorial charges, but we're helping them with that IoT data for how much time was spent at a store, is wait time warranted, etc. And so they know when they click the submit button and submit their invoice that no more audit occurs on that invoice. And they're guaranteed their payment terms from the date that they submit that invoice. In most freight audit and payment processes, your audit starts at this point when the carrier submits their invoice. And the accounts payable team receives that invoice, and then they're trying to match it up with the original BOL. Are the rate differences? Why is the invoice different amount than what we're expecting on the bill of lading for the shipment that we created? Okay, that was a lot. Any questions there?
Just a quick one. You mentioned these 5 steps, and if I'm not mistaken, that process before had how many steps? 11?
Oh, great. Yeah, great question, Eric. Up to 11 steps between the back and forth of in a matching process in a typical freight audit and payment process. Yes. So we definitely made the process more efficient for both the shippers and the carriers as well.
And that's consistent across our industry, right? Where an invoice happens after the fact, and then you dispute it and you resolve it after the fact, and then you pay it a long time after the fact.
Right, right. Okay, I'm going to jump into, we'll actually see the screens and a demo. People can still see my screen. I've switched
Yes,
over
sir.
to our platform. Okay, great. So I'm in a UAT environment, using some Walmart Canada data. And the first, I'm going to direct you here to the dashboard or the menu options over on the left. We have a dashboard. When a carrier logs in, they're seeing, different number of shipment tenders to me over a certain period, because this is UAT test data. It looks like we did a lot of testing in the fall here and haven't needed to do any testing on the UAT for this carrier here in the new year. And then list of workflow, how many shipments are in the platform and where in the 5-step process each of these shipments are at. Some are still being tendered over to this carrier. They've not been accepted yet. Carrier is processing them. We're receiving system updates from IoT devices, and then a good number of them are with this carrier for submission processing. And then we see 118 that have actually, gone to the payables processing portion and made payment out to the carrier. Along with the menu over here on the left, we have master data. This is where we load. I'll click, give you a preview of it. This is where we load your toolkit rates for truckload and less than truckload and pallet rates. So truckload shipments in supply chain are typically a pretty straightforward calculation of origin to destination. How many miles did it travel? So you have a rate that the carrier submits to you for that lane. And then based on the equipment type too, is it a full tractor and trailer or power only? The trailer's ready for them. They're just picking it up and delivering. There may be different rates between power only and trailer. With less than truckload, we're doing 100 weight breaks, number of pallets within the trailer, so that the shipper knows how much volume of that trailer am I responsible for paying. They're not using up the entire trailer, but they will pay for the portion of it that is their shipment. We have the fuel rates visible here. We have tax rates, etc., that are visible here. The main activity that, and we have IoT data here in the menu section too. So within the IoT data, we can see your load tracking, your temperature updates being received, etc. These are not thrilling data to view, but I will tell you, we use those and make that data actionable. If you're simply to look through thousands and thousands of records of IoT data on a user interface, it's not going to be of great value to you, but we're receiving that data and then we're taking action based on the data that we're receiving on how to process those invoices against it. And then
So just a quick question about the data that's being collected. The way it's stored currently, is it able to be easily exchanged with other systems? Say if Walmart Canada wanted to exchange data with the IBM Food Trust or another system, would they be able to speak to each other easily, or would something need to be developed to allow that?
Yeah, great question, Alicia. We consider ourselves integration experts with the work that we're doing with all of the transportation providers out there, Walmart's TMS coming into it. We're connected to Salesforce, SAP, warehouse management system at Walmart. And I'm confident that it would be a project with FoodX to do the data mapping and integration. But once you get that, you will have the data shareable. Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to go to the business workflow. This is where the majority of carriers will spend their time in working invoices. We've got, I'm going to show a list of invoices here for this carrier. Okay. So this is a straightforward view of every one of these rows equates to and correlates to a shipment, delivery being made, and an invoice as well. So a shipment with a load ID of this number here is going from a location in the US coming into a distribution center in Mississauga. So we can see we've got all of these are truckload shipments. There's probably a mix of truckload, less than truckload. This carrier does not do any intermodal or rail, so I won't have one of those, but they're doing both inbound and outbound. We can see these outbound shipments are going from distribution centers out to stores, and the equipment type, was it a full tractor and trailer, or is it power only, VA10? The line haul method is, if it says calculated, it means we look in our master tables and find and pick that rate for this lane between Mississauga and Brampton using power only. And we select the rate that has been agreed to. In the tender process, there can be spot rates though, and we will receive those from the tender. And this indicator will say spot rate, and we'll simply use the spot rate provided to us that's been agreed to through the tendering process. And we do not look up the rate in the master tables. We already have it there on the tender. We're calculating fuel charge here. And then we have there's a subtotal, total, and grand total. And I'll describe a little bit the difference between those. Subtotal will be your line haul rate, your stop charges, your fuel charges, any accessorial charges for the service performed. Between subtotal and total will simply be taxes that are calculated on that invoice. And then between total and grand total will be, if there's any, we do a discount model for a supply chain financing, trade financing, where carriers can receive payment, early payment, in 7 to 10 or less days in exchange for a discount on their invoice. And so the difference between total and grand total will be that calculation of what is the discounted off if you truly did receive payment within the service level agreement of 7 to 10 days from invoice approval. And then if I continue on over here, we've got things like invoice date, the date that the carrier submits their invoice, and then payment date would be the date that payment went into their bank account. We're not showing those because it's a UAT environment, so we don't actually move funds from this this environment. I will tell you too that everything you see me doing on this user interface is completely accomplishable through an API integration with us. So when you see me, if I do an update to an invoice, every record here that you're seeing, every data element that is available, the carriers can receive that, understand what is the status of my invoice on this platform. Many of them will do comparisons with what they have in their TMS to very quickly resolve the disputes if they do arise. And so they'll send updates to us. We're receiving updates from the shippers TMS after the fact of, a tender has been sent out and the carrier does a reweigh and they submit the reweigh. The shipper may update their weight in their TMS. We will receive that. and different updates from the shippers TMS as well about this. One document that serves as both the tender BOL and the invoice that is generated from everything we know about the shipment from the shipper, and then the carrier adds on their accessorial charges as shipment occurs. Every one of these columns is sortable. You can choose which columns you want to select here and show in which order. And I'll just show you the vast number of columns that are available, whether it's a location type. Is it a distribution center, a vendor, a store? There are more than 200 data elements here that could be selected and showing in this view here. I mentioned to you earlier the timeline, the 5-step process. So we show the timeline here. At any time, the carrier can see where is this invoice, and this invoice has actually been submitted for payment. So it's gone through the entire life cycle, and it is sitting at the freight payables step, because they've submitted the invoice and it is in payment processing status for them. Any questions on this before I go into the detail of one of our invoices?
Hey, Pete, I'm just curious about the time decrease in between when the invoice has been issued and when payment has been made since the implementation of the platform.
Yes, so a very typical measurement is DSOs, Alicia. So day sales outstanding. And that is measured from service complete. So proof of delivery, typically service complete by the transportation carrier, to when are they receiving payment. Given the different nature of payment terms, the carriers can choose quick pay, or they may still be on 30, 45 day terms with the shipper for payment. We like to measure it in terms of from the time the carrier is service complete to an approved invoice. Okay. And does that make sense, right? Because
yes, that does.
Until you get an approved invoice, then your payment terms, can impact when payment is at any time. But you really want to get to that approved invoice as quickly as possible, and then your payment terms are just static. DSOs have dropped significantly with this process in getting an approved invoice. We have some carriers that are on average less than 2 days, less than 48 hours of submitting their invoice to an approved invoice on the platform.
That's great.
So yeah, it's really been efficient for Walmart, as well as the carriers have gained some significant benefits from the platform.
And before that, it would have been weeks, if not months, right?
Absolutely, Eric. Yeah, to get through all of the disputes, the dispute challenges can just add weeks and weeks to processing. And then when they stack up and there's a backlog of queue of them, right? Both the shipper and the carrier, they have teams assigned to, okay, go and just work on the backlog and get rid of it, where the current team will try to keep up with the current invoices and shipments occurring.
Pete, I had pretty much the same questions, and actually going to the extent of what's the resource saving within Walmart, and also do you know the resource saving for the shippers themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. So within Walmart, so we've done an ROI calculation. Walmart has supported us on that ROI calculation. It is close to 5% of their annual freight spend. And so with the volume that Walmart Canada does, about 500 50 million freight spend annually. They were reaching in the neighborhood of $30 million savings from this implementation. Does that help you? Was that Sophia?
Yeah, it was, Sophia, and that is really helpful, really impressive. Thank you.
We're pretty confident in our ROI calculator that we're going to achieve for a shipper 3 to 5, pretty typical 3% of annual freight spend. And, you know, when in supply chains, when you're processing hundreds of millions of dollars in your supply chain freight processing yearly, it's a big number.
How do you get them to buy in the first place? I mean, it's a big switch for them if they're having to change the way they process data, especially if they don't currently have ways to measure that data.
Right. So great question. It's a complex sale. It's when you're doing invoice processing in a supply chain for a large shipper. They need to be very confident in you know, how they're supplied, because you cannot mess up people's supply chains, right? It's an extremely important function for them, and has only gotten more visibility to it in the last 5 years, I would say. In 2007, how many times you would see an article in the general newspaper on supply chains and challenges to it was very, very limited, but it seemed like it was every week through COVID and more recently, right? So buy-in, they have to have the need. They have to recognize that they are losing, you know, have an inefficient invoicing process and payment, and usually it will rear its head up in terms of number of disputes that they're having with carriers. In Walmart Canada's case, it was they had one of their most significant partners, transportation carrier, indicate to them that they were going to not renew their contract because their payables was just too long. They could not get their payables from Walmart Canada. And so Walmart Canada realized we need to make changes here, definitely. Does that help?
It does, thank you. And so we're talking about Walmart Canada here. Is this going to be implemented across Walmart in other countries, or I don't know how the organization works, how well linked it is?
Yeah. So Walmart, each country is somewhat autonomous for Walmart. They make their own decisions in a lot of cases. For technology-wise, there is a Walmart International group that really kind of sets the standards for technology that you know, they endorse and support and will provide support to for all of the different countries. But then the countries do have some autonomous to make their own decisions. We're implementing Walmart Mexico as we speak. The Walmart International, that IT team that I've mentioned to you, we've partnered with them, provided much consulting services in some of their new TMS that they're rolling out. And so we're kind of anticipating that we will get more Walmart countries, absolutely, as we move forward.
Awesome. I know with TradeLens, we were doing a pilot with Clockwork with Walmart Mexico, basically using a driver's mobile app to track where the driver is and get that data feeding into TradeLens. I mean, this is awfully similar.
Okay, it does sound very, very similar, yes.
Yeah, cool.
And if I can add, we've had Pete and DLT Labs on our calls before, and the amount of people from Walmart internationally that would join those calls was just phenomenal, right? So the interest is absolutely there. They still don't have the visibility. I mean, Walmart's a big organization. I think, you know, not everybody knows about this solution, but the folks who hear about it, they all want it.
Very good. Thanks, Eric. I'm going to pop up the details of, and let me just check my time. Gosh, okay, 15 minutes left here. I'll try and get through this reasonably quickly. So just to show you the volume of information that is here, this carrier actually happens to be doing EDI with us. We'll do APIs. We will accept EDI from a carrier. It's not a two-way back and forth communication as well as API, but we will process EDI for some carriers. And then if we look at the load details over here, this tells me that it's a full truckload outbound from Mississauga to a store in Bolton. Number of pallets here in the trailer, and we'll have weight on here. The total distance that is being traveled is 89. So we have some off-route miles here as well. Number of stops is 5. So we should see some stop charges based on the number of stops is more than just a single delivery. There are some off-route miles to this, so we should see some off-route charge as well, and those will appear in the known charges. And so we can see here the rate for this shipment is $258. We've got a fuel charge of $32. We do see those stop charges there, some off-route mile charges. If it was a heated vehicle, we would see a heat charge. If it was a reefer, it would have a different rate to it as well. The carrier has not submitted any accessorial charges. If they wanted to, they would simply submit an accessorial charge. And we're integrated with Walmart's Salesforce for accessorial charges. And we'll get a response back on approval of an accessorial charge through business rules. A lot of business rules are processing these. And it will take seconds to approve an accessorial charge for many of their accessorial charges, whether it's wait time, shunt, layovers, vehicle ordered, not used, or TANU. That's a very straightforward process in this platform. You know, a driver arrives and their shipment is no longer available for them. They will receive an update that the shipment is canceled for them, but they can still submit wait time or TANU charges on it. So a lot of flexibility with the platform as well. Any questions on the details? Updating shipments would be done through here, and yeah, it's a pick list of updating an accessorial charge, adding it to the shipment for the carrier, things like that. Let me just see if I've missed anything on. Yeah, I think I've got it on the freight side of the house. I'll just change gears a little bit here, and I will log in and show you a little bit about our last mile capabilities. And so what makes last mile slightly different than freight is, with last mile, they're deliveries to homes. And in this case, they're grocery deliveries to homes from a Walmart store or fulfillment center. Most of them are being fulfilled through stores, and they're being delivered by crowdsourced partners. So your Uber Eats, DoorDash, Face Drive, etc., are using this platform. And to let's just look at DoorDash orders in our UAT environment. And so what goes into an order that is being delivered for home grocery delivery. And so, too, we are receiving the order from Walmart's web shopping, where there's been a delivery order requested, and DoorDash is going to deliver this. So we calculate this invoice for every shipment made or every delivery that DoorDash does, and we consolidate them, amalgamate them into as the number of shipments that DoorDash has done in a month. We roll those all up into a single invoice and present those to Walmart. DoorDash approves the invoice, and then Walmart makes payment to DoorDash based on that invoice. So very similar to the freight model. It's just there's thousands of deliveries and slightly different information. So we have the freight rate, which is based on, we're calculating the number of miles from the store to the delivery endpoint, and what is the rate for that number of miles. Is there a tip that the receiver has provided to the DoorDash company? All of that is going into an invoice, being amalgamated, rolled up, and paid to DoorDash from Walmart. Any questions on this? If there's a rebate, a few have rebate programs based on, it's a volume discount by number of deliveries they do for a month. They will offer Walmart a discount. So you'll see those discounts processed in the platform as well. Any questions on that?
Sounds like not.
Okay. Let me see. I have just a few more slides with maybe some questions. Let's take some questions from folks.
Don't be shy, people. It can't just be the Eric and Alicia show here. Come on, ask your questions. I have one, but I'm waiting my turn.
Okay. Here's a little bit about the results. Disputes down, real-time invoicing and approvals, integrated trade finance in it, complete information is available. All right. A little quote from John Bayless to give you an idea of saving millions of dollars, the ROI that they realized. And then a little bit about success factors. So why is this so successful between the shipper and the carrier? I would say visibility, but it's that, and you'll notice these are all attributed to blockchain, some of these. So shared real-time information, it's a shared digital ledger. Automated execution using smart contracts. So the process, understanding that every invoice will process to the business rules that I have configured for this partnership, whether it's the carrier that really cares about that contract and how it processes, or the shipper on the other side. Both are confident that they're processing the way they expect. And then tamper-proof, traceability, the immutability of knowing the trust in how this shipment is being processed, this invoice is being processed. A few other key success factors. We've talked about the integration, the ability to integrate between shippers and carriers and make their daily operations process impact it as little as possible. I think one of the biggest lessons learned was that this was a business-driven initiative from a team, Walmart's transportation team, that needed a solution, that needed a fix for something that they were challenged with, as opposed to being an IT innovation effort and doing a proof of concept. They needed a solution that they wanted to move forward with.
So Pete, this is Jeff again. Question on the IoT piece. Well, I guess a bigger question is, because the way the data is coming in now, is Walmart looking, or anybody else looking at different, because there's this data being collected, different uses of it? I guess one of the examples I have is the IoT. Is it showing fuel usage? Is that one of the pieces of data that come out of the IoT?
I don't know if we get that, Jeff, from IoT data, but we know the miles traveled and we're tracking fuel consumption. Absolutely. Okay. We're tracking, well, there's a carbon tax here in Canada.
That's what I was coming up with next. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. We're tracking and calculating that carbon tax for the shippers as well. It's calculated within the fuel charge as well, but they have visibility to what the carbon tax is that is being calculated and everything. Yeah, great questions.
And the fuel usage might come out of the ELD, which is in a lot of the trucks today anyway, right?
Right. Yeah. It depends if you're getting it from the truck itself or from within the trailer on the shipment, right?
Looking at the data that you're collecting, it looks like most of it's coming from IoT. How much room is there for human error in data recording?
Okay. There's still room, Alicia. And I would say there's data augmentation using IoT data. But really the main source of the data starts with that tender. What does this shipment look like? It tells you everything about the origin, destination pair, number of miles traveled, number of stops, etc. And so honestly, to calculate a freight invoice, 95+% of the information is on that tender initially. And then it's all of the things that happen when a shipment moves, and is there additional off-route miles required? What are the wait time stops? Is there a demurrage detention at a location? Things like that. So how do you calculate those? So upfront, there is room for error in that initial TMS entry of this tender out to the carriers. But that gets, because the invoice becomes visible immediately to both parties, they very quickly resolve those and make those corrections, and then they recognize, okay, this invoice matches to what the service that's going to be provided.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
In terms of intermodal, what are the main data sources? I know you mentioned a bit on this at the start.
Right.
But generally speaking, especially with hauliers, how are you getting, in most cases, how are you getting the data?
So again, it's the tender for the shipment, so we know the shipment, and then we're receiving IoT data typically at the front and back end of the rail move. So when it is picked up at, a lot of them are full intermodal, right? So it's a pickup at a vendor, trucked to the rail station, goes on rail. So it's a container shipped across the country to a distribution center out west is the most common move, or from Port of Vancouver in across the country to DC's via rail. And then it goes, truck from rail yard out to a DC. So we're receiving the IoT data on each one of those legs and where it is in that route. Does that help you, Sophia?
Yeah, and then my next question was going to be, do the operators fund that themselves? Do they invest in the IoT trackers, for example, or is that provided by Walmart?
Yeah, no, it was Walmart's requirement that they have these. So many of the operators would have that technology already on board of their trailers or containers, and some would have added it specifically for these Walmart shipments. But I think a good number of carriers are tracking their equipment usage with devices, ELDs today, right? So it wasn't a huge leap for them.
Yeah, I just wonder with subcontraction in the UK specifically, we do a lot of subcontraction within third-party logistics within haulage. I don't know if that's the same case in Canada.
Yes, yeah, we term it brokerage here. So many of the carriers on this platform are brokers as well. So just because you see the invoice between them and Walmart on this platform, it could have been another third party, smaller owner operator that actually made the delivery of this. And so that has led to some of the brokerage carriers on our platform inquiring if they can use this exact same model and solution for their business. So their contract management with all of their brokerage owner operator carriers out there, understanding when a proof of delivery has happened from that carrier, so that they can turn around and bill their original shipping company, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. You get into the territory of really small hauliers who might not have any systems, any tracking data at all. In fact, sometimes even like one-man bands who wouldn't necessarily need that, but if they're working regularly for larger organizations that require that, it changes the dynamic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thanks.
I'm going to slip in my question that you kind of answered already, Pete, around the use or why blockchain adds value, but how much more complicated would all of this have been without DLT, without blockchain, right? Because
Sure.
you can do APIs and not have to use a ledger. You can use EDI and not have to use a ledger. What was the added value of using Hyperledger, which is the case here, but what blockchain?
Well, absolutely right, Eric. Distributed technologies have been around for a number of decades now. The beauty of blockchain is that it's all incorporated. So it is a distributed ledger. You've got the security incorporated into it. You can add your smart contract logic into it. So it just streamlines the development, the deployment, the efficiency of doing it. So with our platform, just to give you an example of, Walmart Canada did an RFP. We responded to it with a use case of tracking cocoa development in Africa to delivery and ensuring that child labor was not being used. And the Walmart team kind of looked at us like we were crazy. What does that have to do with supply chain freight management processing and invoice processing? And we told them we could be up and running within 60 to 90 days once requirements were done. And we hit that, I believe it was 72 days. We were live in production once the requirements were delivered to us because of the configurability and what is there. And so if you were to do that in terms of other technologies, Eric, significantly more time and significantly more development, starting from a use case that really was not built at the outset of this.
Amazing.
That's fantastic. I want to be
Folks.
mindful of time. We're now a couple minutes over. I think Eric was about to say the same thing. Pete, thank you so much. This was an excellent presentation. Really helped, I think, everybody understand more about your platform and the possibility of what you're doing, what this shows.
Well, thank you very much for the invite. It's been an honor to be here.
So will the slides be available?
Yes, I can share those out.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Then I can add them to the agenda on the wiki.
And Pete, maybe
Okay,
next time you
perfect.
can come talk to us about what you're doing in mining.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, sounds good. Okay,
There
thanks,
you go.
Eric.
that would be great.
All right,
Okay,
folks.
Thank you so much. See
thanks,
you all in
Pete.
2 weeks.
All right,
Thank
take
you
thanks,
so
care.
much. Really
Thank you.
insightful.
Thanks,
Thank
Pete.
you. Bye.